my friend, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Fool Rides Again, the podcast where I, Jinx, your host and imaginary friend, answers the burning question of what happens when you release a rider into the wild and get the chance to explore the world. So if you've ever been interested in topics such as plot development, world building, character creation, or even character motivation, then this is the podcast for you, so please stay tuned. And on this week's exciting episode, I'm going to answer the burning question, what happens when a rider gets a chance to explore the world of concerts? What better way to do that than start off with a couple scenarios. First one being this. Imagine you're an individual who's invited to go to a concert with a friend. Nothing unusual about that. The only thing that stands out is this concert is in a different state, so you have to drive there. Your friend offers, he picks you up from your house after work one day, and you drive a couple hours to get to the venue. It's in a place you've never been. It's a very weird town, but you don't think anything of it. You find the venue pretty easily. The parking situation's not all that great, but you and your friend find a decent spot, lined up in all the vehicles and lines of cars. You go into the concert, see that everything else there is exactly what you imagine. You've been to a lot of concerts, and this one really doesn't stand all that out. There are lots of people, there are food booths there, there's merch, there's beer, alcohol, rowdy people, good music, and you and your friend join the crowd, and you really just have a good time listening to your favorite bands play. The end of the concert rolls around and you and your friend are ready to go because you still have a long drive to get. And as you're going to look for your vehicle, there's lots of cars there and everything. And you go where you think you parked and you discover your friend's car is no longer there. There is just a gap where a car should be. What happens next? That's not the scenario for you. How about this one instead? Imagine you're an individual who decided to go to a concert, and it's a metal concert, so you're expecting a lot of rambunctious people. You want to join the pit and mosh with everyone. You don't care if it's a pogo pit or a circle pit. Maybe there'll even be a wall of death, and you're happy about it because concerts are your happy place. You love live music. And you get there, and there's quite a bit of people in the crowd, but you don't let that stop you. You join the crowd, and you start making your way forward because, yes, you want to be in the pit and all that, but you also want to ride the rail because this is your favorite band. And if you can get to the very front of the crowd so you can watch your favorite band live and you can pretty much feel the sweat flying off the lead singer and everything like this, you would be happy. The photos that your favorite band posts on social media because you were that close and visible. You don't think too much of it as you push through the crowd because lots of people are moving around and everyone is moving aside as you politely yet firmly move your way forward. And after a couple minutes of struggling to get through the crowd, you reach your goal. You are now riding the rail. And you start listening to the music, jamming out with everyone else, clapping your hands when the band is signaling you to clap, everything like that. And after a couple songs worth of that, you notice people pushing into you. And you're like, okay, the pit must be starting. And because you're so happy with where you are, you don't really want to be dragged into the pit. So you turn your head to look over your shoulder, and you see it's not actually a pit. There is a full-on fight happening in the crowd right behind you. People are throwing fists, tackling each other to the ground. There's blood flying and everything like this. And your favorite band is still singing along while this fight is going on right behind you. What happens next? If that scenario is a little too bloody for you, how about this one instead? Imagine you and your buddy went to this concert in another state. Very similar to the first scenario where you and him drive couple hours to get to the venue. It's in a city that you've never been to before. And you find the parking lot to the venue is very poorly set up. There's only one entrance in, and yet there are a whole lot of lines that have cars trying to merge into the one entrance. And you just picture, this is going to be a nightmare when you try to leave because all these cars that are filtering in will have to leave, and every car is not going to be as generous letting others out. So you and your friend decide to take a chance with the concert. You're like, okay, we don't have to work the next day, so we can stay as long as we really need to here. And hopefully, if we stay in the venue long enough, most of the cars will have left already, and we'll just be able to drive out. But as luck would have it, when you start making your way out, you realize that's not the case. There are still lines upon lines upon lines of cars trying to get out of this parking lot. And instead of sitting there in the parking lot waiting for everyone to leave, you and your friend go get in the car and debate what to do. Your friend pulls up his GPS to see if there's another way out, and his GPS shows that there is a little small back road out of the parking lot that you might be able to follow and leave. So you take a chance. You start following that little route, and you're confused why no one else is going down this road that is showing plainly on the GPS. What is going to happen? And as you keep going further and further, you notice the road is getting sketchier and sketchier. And it's going from pavement to dirt. And it's not just nice dirt. It's pretty rough and rocky and everything. But you and your friend are still wanting to take a chance, and you continue driving down this road. And soon you leave lights of all the other cars behind you. The venue is no longer there in sight. But this road is continuing into the darkness, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere you really need to go. What happens next? And because I want to, and like I always do, I've got a fourth scenario for you. Imagine you're going to a concert. Surprise, surprise. And it's a concert for one of your favorite bands, and you bought the tickets over a year ago, and you waited the time to get there, and you're super excited for this show. It's all you've been talking about for weeks. You're going to go party with everyone else that loves the same type of music as you. You're going to go buy all the merchandise so you can support your favorite band. You're going to have some beer and party, and it's going to be a really great time. And you get there pretty early because you want to make your way to the front of the stage. You want to be at the front of the crowd, right in front of the stage. So your favorite artist can see you. And if you're lucky enough, your favorite artist might get off the stage, take your phone, and take a selfie of you two together. And if you're not that lucky, you might catch a guitar pick or a drumstick or even the set list from them, because that is all memorabilia that you could add to your collection. And you will be able to tell stories later on that this is my favorite show, and I was able to grab set list and this guitar pick, and I got a photo with the band, and it's awesome. It's everything you hope to be. It'd be the greatest culmination to this long wait you did for your favorite show that's finally here. So as you make your way to the front of the stage, in the front of the crowd, you're just happy, and you're still there earlier than the music, and you manage to get to the barricade, and it's everything you hoped. You don't know anyone else because you went by yourself, and you're sitting there in the crowd watching the stagehand set up everything, and then a couple minutes later, you're waking up in a hospital. You have no idea how you got. What happens next? Well, that should be enough with the scenario, so let's get on with it. The story behind this episode and all these scenarios comes from the most recent concert I went to. Me and my buddy bought tickets to Papa Roach and set it off in Autumn Kings, and we decided to drive up to Pocatello on a Thursday after work. Both of us would normally work Friday, but we decided to take the day off because it was a concert, and neither of us expected to be home till, 2 in the morning, and neither of us wanted to go to work like 3 hours later. So we took the day off, and it was a blast. We drove up to the city that it was being held in. It's a city I've never been to before. I've driven through it a couple times and got there pretty early. Him and I decided to go to a little brewery, get some food before the show, grab some beer, hung out. We were pretty early still, and we decided to wander around the town for a bit and exploring things, going in and out of different shops. The vinyl shop, the music shop, a couple other things. Eventually, we killed enough time that we were pretty close to the concert starting. We drove to the venue and found a place to park. I will say that this parking lot is a really small parking lot. It's a dirt lot, looked more like a construction site than a concert venue. There were logs set up in a couple areas. There was some construction, vehicles around the place, but we pulled in with everyone else and we found a spot. No one was guiding parking, so everyone was pretty much parking at their own risk. Some people put entire car lengths between them and the next vehicle. Some were super close, so if you open the door, you're getting a door ding. Doesn't really matter what happened. But we found our spot. We parked pretty easily, moved into the venue. Line into the venue was pretty quick. I think it was one of the shortest concert lines I've ever waited in. Security was quick. I just basically walked up, went through the metal detector, scanned my ticket, and we were in the shop. I brought up the going into the vinyl shop earlier because when I was in the vinyl shop, they were talking about this specific venue, and when Papa Roach had come through last time, they were talking about how this venue was able to hold about 8,000 people, and that prior show, there was such a bad rain delay that only about 3,000 people ended up at the actual venue. 5,000 people just didn't go. I've been to some venues that hold 30,000 plus people, so walking into one that maxes out about 8,000, it's a pretty small venue. And the crowd itself for these bands was also really small. Knowing that, me and my buddy, we decided to try to make our way to the barricade, which did not take a lot of effort. We moved up. We already had pit tickets so we could get into the pit. Got there, and it took barely any effort to push forward. The first bands, Autumn Kings, were pretty fun. Not much happened there. The crowd was still pretty small. The sun was high in the sky, and it was 90 plus degrees out, so a lot of people were trying to sit off in the distance in the shade. Those of us who were in the pit on asphalt were kind of hating life because it was that hot, but we didn't let that stop us. We moved there, moved forward a little bit. Autumn Kings played, then Set It Off came on, and more people filtered into the pit. Me and my buddy, we moved further forward, closer to the barricade, and behind us, a mosh pit started. There were not very many people in this pit, maybe a dozen or so. I thought about joining, but I decided it wasn't as worthwhile, and I'd rather be closer to the barricade. Watched the band for a while. Eventually, they went off stage, and Papa Roach came on. And even more people filtered into the pit for that because they're the overall headliners, and people came for Roach. As me and my buddy are sitting there right on the barricade, we see another mosh pit start up behind us. Cool. We're at a metal concert. Of course there's going to be a pit. Set It Off had it with about a dozen. Papa Roach had one with even more in it because more people in the pit mean more people in the mosh pit, and it's great. Eventually, that pit died down, though. Something I've never actually seen happen at a concert happened. I've heard about them, but me and my buddy are sitting there up front, and I feel someone shove into me. I look behind me, thinking another pit started, but no, it was not a pit. An actual fight started. Don't know what happened between the people, but something caused the fight to start, and security actually came in to drag out a dozen or so people who were involved in this fight. Never found out what happened, but I got really nervous that I was going to be dragged into the fight, and security would think I'm part of it, and they would drag me out, which would really suck when you pay a lot of money for a concert just to be dragged down, kicked out, especially for something you didn't do. But that got resolved pretty quickly, and my fears were alleviated because I got to stay. And security dragged the troublemakers away. Eventually, Roach stopped playing, the show was over, and people started filtering out. Me and my buddy, as I mentioned, didn't work the next day, so we decided to stay in the venue for longer because we didn't want to go sit in our car and try to leave and fight through the crowd and traffic through everything. But eventually, we were forced out of the venue. We didn't have to go home, but we couldn't stay there. We found our car, hopped in, and like I expected, there were still a ton of people trying to leave through a couple different exits, and cars were filtering in slowly, but other cars were not letting them go. And me and my buddy decide we're gonna try to take a different exit. He pulls up his GPS and finds, there is another exit out of this parking lot that no one's going. And we find the exit. We drive down this little dirt road, and we find a gate and a ditch. We can't drive down the ditch, and the gate, we can't drive through the gate, so we're like, we're out of luck. We turned around and found our way back to the main parking lot where everyone was leaving, and we hopped in a line to leave. Eventually, we get into the line, and we get out of the parking lot and make our way home. Nothing eventful happened like in any of my scenarios, but the story here might explain where the scenarios came from. Obviously, the scenario about the fight came directly from witnessing a fight. I just changed it up a little bit. Instead of the scenario where I gotta stay in the venue, I create a scenario where people think I'm involved in the fight and drag me out. It's pretty simple there. What happens in that situation? If you were dragged out of a fight or out of a concert that you paid money for a fight that you did not start, what would you do? Would you argue with security? Would you fight them trying to stay where you are? Would you see what they were trying to do? Just bring you out of the pit to safety maybe? What happens? A lot of possibilities arise from there just based on how people act and how they interact with everyone else. Fight or flight, I guess. But the simple act of seeing a fight in a mosh pit that's not an actual pit leads to the question of what do you do if you're a part of it? If your main character is really a brawler, he might fight back and push everyone out of the way because he's trying to stay there at the front. Or he might not. He might be the hesitant person who just lets security drag him away and be quiet about it because fighting with security would cause more problems and he doesn't want to deal with that. Maybe once he's out of the crowd, he'd be able to explain to security what was actually going on and they'd let him go back in. But that kind of depends on what kind of character you have. Based on your character's personality and stuff, could dictate how your character responds to that kind of situation. Maybe your character is really not involved in the fight, but maybe his girlfriend is involved in the fight and gets drawn into it. So your character is now going into a protective mode. Maybe it's not a girlfriend. Maybe it's a child. A lot of different aspects of this fight. How it goes just depends on your character's personality. Are they hesitant? Are they aggressive? Are they known by security maybe? When I was in this concert, There were two people standing next to me that actually knew several of the security people. So every time security would come by, they would talk to them because they've known each other for years. So if your character knows security, maybe they just get a slap on the wrist and told to watch what they're doing. It's a pretty simple scenario to play with, but it can go so many different ways just based on character personality. My other 3 scenarios are slightly more to work with, and I'll dissect them in different order. The scenario of going to the concert and waking up minutes later in the hospital, that one was a little bit different. And yes, it kind of inspired by my trip to the concert, but not in the way that I described. But the basic premise of it, character goes to the concert, he's waiting in the crowd, and he gets knocked out for some reason, only to wake up what he assumes minutes later in the hospital. But because you're in the hospital, it's at least been hours, maybe days. Timelines are up to however people want them, and whoever writes the story can talk about the timeline however they want. But when I was there in the crowd, there were 2 crowd surfers. I'm not surprised there was crowd surfers. I'm more surprised where one started. Mind you, at this point, I'm on the barricade. So one of the crowd surfers started right behind me. A husband picked up his wife and basically just tossed her over the barricade. The people next to me supported her, and security still grabbed her and made sure she landed carefully, but it was not much of a surf. Usually if people are surfing, they're farther back in the crowd. All this really did was they put her in, they quickly moved her out of the way, and she had to go to the very back of the crowd and fight her way forward again. So that idea there kind of created that scenario. What if no one was there to actually catch this person, and she was thrown over the barricade and knocked out? That would suck. Especially if you paid money for a show and then end up in the hospital. In my scenario, I made it first thing, so the main character hasn't even had a chance to hear any of the music. They're just excited for music, and the next thing they know, they miss the music completely, and they wake up in a hospital. In reality, the person I watched, it was on the 3rd band, so they at least seen 2 bands already, and they've seen a lot of the music. It doesn't help the situation, but at least it can alleviate a little bit. Like, I spent money on this concert, I didn't even watch any of it, versus I spent money on the concert, I only missed 1 band. You can change when things happen in the story, just to get different reactions too. The whole I didn't get to see any of the music, I'd be super upset with that situation because I paid and I want to listen to these bands. I missed only 1 band out of 3. Doesn't sound too bad. Versus if you say, the only band I missed was my favorite band. Okay, that's a worse situation again. Based on how many bands and everything you see in that situation before you're knocked down, wake up in a hospital, can affect how upset you are and what kind of reaction you get. Maybe your character is only there with someone else on a date, and your character doesn't really care about any of the music because they're a country fan and they're not metal fans. They're just there on a date. So they don't care that they missed any of the bands. Or maybe it's this situation. Maybe your character is there on a date and he's not the one that got knocked out, but his date was. And now he has to rush away to make sure she's okay. Crappy situation again. He's missing the music because his date was knocked out. And this music is his favorite music. You can change your perspective there on who is in the fight and everything like that too, based on that. And you can make it even more of an issue by increasing the injury. What kind of injury does the person get? Are they knocked out only, or is there blood involved now? They took such a hit that their head is bleeding. Maybe some crowd surfer fell on them. Maybe they were the crowd surfer and the crowd dropped them. Maybe they were in a mosh pit and someone swung a fist, unintentionally knocked out your character. Lots of that can go hand in hand, and it can change the perspective of the story. But it still has a general idea there that your character went for the music, and he missed the music for something outside of his control. And again, based on how your character acts in situations, is he meek or is he aggressive, can change how he handles the situation afterward. If he's a meek character, he might let it go. But if he's an aggressive character, he might not. He might go and try to get a refund because he missed all the music. He might try to track down the people responsible for him being knocked out and try to get some revenge, whether it's, they have to pay him back for the ticket or something, because he feels like he was gypped going to a concert and missing the concert. A lot of stories can go from that based on just all that situation. Now, as for the other 2 scenarios, they're kind of related. They both involve parking lots and driving. First one, where the car is no longer there, it is a situation that I've obviously never experienced myself, but I've always feared it whenever I leave anything, really. If I go to the grocery store, what if my car is no longer in the parking lot where I left it? If I go to a concert, what if it's no longer in the parking lot where I left it? If I go to a convention, what if it's no longer in the parking lot where I left it? What happened to my car? Did I accidentally park in a no parking zone? Was it towed? Was it stolen? What happened to my car? In some of those situations, I don't care as much, because if I go to the grocery store and I come out and my car is not there, yes, I will be mad. But it's not that end of the world, because it's a local grocery store and I can still get home relatively easily. I might have to call a friend to pick me up, family member, Uber real quick to get home from where I'm at. Some of the grocery stores near me are actually walking distance, so I can just go and walk. But changing the distance and location ups the ante a bit. In my scenario, this concert is not local. It is in a different state hours away. So if you walk out and your car is not there, what do? No one that you know is close. You're not going to be able to just call someone up and within minutes they're going to be there to drive you home. You might be able to call someone up and they'll come pick you up, but you're hours away, so you still have to sit there for hours. You could probably Uber, but that's also a very expensive Uber, and not every Uber is willing to cross state lines. They don't want to come pick you up and then drive 3 hours to get you home, to turn around and drive 3 hours to get themselves. They're only being paid for the 3 hours that they drive you, not the entire 6 hours. So, what do you do in that situation? Do you wait till day and you and your friend try to find a hotel to stay at? Or do you hitch a ride home? What happens? Simple act of not having a vehicle when you're somewhere else has potential to create a lot of terrifying situations. If you try to hitch a ride, are you getting lucky with a actual decent person? Or are you being picked up by a serial killer or something like that? If you try to stay in a hotel, is it a good hotel? Or are you unlucky and you are in a nefarious hotel? Let's play with that idea a little bit more too. What if this was not a singular incident, and that it is common for a car to go missing at a concert like this, specifically this venue? What if you're just the unlucky individual in the latest string of incidents involved around this venue? Every concert at this venue has one single vehicle go missing in an attempt to have those individuals belonging to that car stay at the hotel across the street, and then those individuals who stay at the hotel are not heard from again. What if this was just a strange case in some ritualistic killing, because people are grouped up to cause strangers to stay at this hotel? A terrifying thought, but it can create a very interesting story just by having people lose a vehicle. What is the reason behind their vehicle being gone? I can go on for days and days about this idea itself, but I'm hoping you see the potential and all the possibilities that come from this idea. But since I don't want to stay talking about this one, let's move to the next scenario. The one where you take the random trail. This obviously came from my story directly, where me and my buddy tried to find another exit. It was listed on the GPS, but once we got there, we found out it's not a real exit. But what if it wasn't blocked? What if it was actually a real exit, but people just don't take it? All the locals know not to take it for a certain reason, but everyone who's not local takes the path that should not be taken. What happens in that situation? Maybe the locals just don't take it because it's a extra long, windy road, not paved and everything, and they don't want their vehicles to be scratched up and dented like that. And they know if they wait in line, they'll get home sooner than taking this road. It could be that simple, but it could also be the case where this road leads to nowhere. Maybe it's a long, windy road to like a river bank, and now they have to turn around and drive back the long, windy road. Or it's more nefarious. It's treacherous road. There's a cliff on one side, and it's very narrow, and in the dark, it's not safe to drive, and then it's very easy for a vehicle to go over the edge. A lot of possibilities there just on this dark road in a state that you do not know. You and your buddy just don't know the situation well enough to avoid it, because you're stuck there and you're just trusting your GPS because you don't want to wait in line. But sometimes waiting in line is the safer option. Taking the mysterious road that no one else is taking, that could be the real risk. What happens on that risk? Maybe it's just treacherous driving. Maybe it leads you to a situation you don't want to be in. Maybe it's just trapped altogether. Maybe you go down that road and find it's a one-way road and you get a dead end and you decide to turn around, come back, and the gate is actually closed and you can't get through it now and you're stuck on the wrong side of the gate. Who knows? There's a lot of possibilities there. I'm hoping you realize that no matter the situation you're in, whatever you're doing, you can pull a lot of inspiration from it for writing. It might be a very simple story where there's just a fight and your character gets knocked out and it nothing nefarious. Yes, they end up in a hospital, but it could have been completely accidental. But then there's also the more interesting takes. Maybe there's just an entire plot of underground crime ring that is trying to trap out-of-state individuals for some reason. Not every interesting story has to involve magic either. My scenarios today, pretty ground in reality. They're all realistic. None of them have magic involved. It's just more dark and nefarious. And I hope I got the point across in today's scenarios. That stories really can come from anywhere. The inspiration comes for everything. It's just a matter of breaking your mind a bit to look at situations and scenarios in a different aspect. Once I started looking around differently, everything else seems more realistic. All these are possibilities, and I could have changed any of these scenarios too to add magic in too, but I don't always want to add magic. Sometimes I just like the mystery of what could potentially live out there in reality. But my friend, I think that's a good time to call it. I really could go on and on about any of these scenarios and possibilities because I like thinking of the nefarious aspect behind a lot of my ideas, but I really don't want to bore you with all of them. You probably get the point. So with that being said, I'm going to leave you with a scenario before I actually call it a day. This week's writing prompt for you is this. Write a story about an individual who went to their favorite event and ended up missing it completely because they ended up in a hospital. Don't care the genre, whether it's horror, fantasy, romance, or action. And I don't care the format, whether it's poetry, flash fiction, a journal entry, or even a song. As always, all I really care about is you have fun with it and make the most out of it. But now really it's time for me to call it a day. If you enjoyed the content of this week's episode, please give me a follow. And if you want any more content from the Jinks'd world, visit my website at jinxedworld.com. That is JINKSDWORLD.com. Until next time, have fun writing.